Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. On today's show, we have Brian Walker from U.S. Department of Energy and Kelly Gordon, who's a program manager at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Before we get to them, though, we're going to have a good show, so just wait for it. But you can't forget the easy folks. That's right. The people who keep it all easy for you. I'm talking about KEYSTONE. That's KEYSTONETECH.com. Greg, Ehrich, keep it easy with Light Made Easy, the retrofit kings at KeystoneTech.com.
So, yeah, talk about keeping it easy. Sometimes you need to see the product before you sell it, right? That's important. You want to see how it performs and do that. Sure, they'll send out samples and they'll do all that, but they also have a new feature that's a live meeting you can do at their facility on the computer. You're at your place, they're at their place. They're going to actually demo all the product. It's a full showroom and it's awesome. Check it out. You can book
Keystone
your time on their
Live,
website.
always coming out hot. They're taking after the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. They were the original sponsor. Now they have their own thing set up. I love it. Of course, proud members, longtime members now, Greg, of the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. That's nailed.org. Get educated, get associated. We got LS Evolve coming out hot. We got people from Pacific Northwest National Laboratory that are doing Andrea Wilkerson's LS Evolve modules are coming out, I don't know, anytime now, all on queuing and all that sort of stuff. Go to naild.org. Forget about it. Come on, let's do it. But for right now, Brian Walker, Kelly Gordon, thank you for being the guests.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mike. And thanks, Greg. So thank you for having us on and giving us a chance to talk about the L Prize. Secretary of Energy just announced it on May the 17th, the start of this multi-million-dollar prize competition. We're excited to talk about it with you here today. And we'll have a chance, hopefully to talk about the prize, of course, get into your thoughts about it. I guess I wanted to begin by talking about what we perceive to be the problem, right? If a prize like this is an answer, what's the question? And really the thing I guess I want to begin with, right, is the fact that most of your listeners, but some people out there in the lighting community, or beyond the lighting community, when they're talking about the most innovative places that we need to be spending time and attention, there are some folks who want to say that lighting is done. They want to say, right, that's great, the LED revolution is past tense, check the box, move on. And what we're realizing from some of the market data that we have, right, talking to manufacturers, also distributors, also installers, is we're really realizing that the adoption of LED hasn't gone quite as quickly as we would have hoped. And it specifically hasn't gone quite as quickly in certain segments of the market, specifically in commercial, right? It's pretty difficult sometimes to see that, right? If you're a consumer, like many of the folks that I'm working with, many families that maybe made the switch to LED a long time ago because they could buy bulbs at Home Depot and they could buy them at Walmart. But we're realizing, right, that we need to have a clear value proposition. We also need to bring a lot of different pieces together to make sure that we're seeing the kind of innovation that we want to see. And so part of that is making sure that people know, look, it's not enough to just drive on luminous efficacy. The Department of Energy's mission for a very long time has been about energy savings, and we're not going to forget that, right? I'm not going to forget who I work for or why. We're also knowing it's not enough. Right? Lighting has to be high quality. We have to listen to customers. We have to listen to what it is that they actually want. That's one of the reasons why I'm really glad to be on your podcast today. We also have to think about where that next incremental watt, kilowatt, terawatt is going to come from when we're going to save energy. And that's part of the reason why it's not enough to think about, even the way we've thought about quality in the past, it's also important to think about how we're going to enable the watts saved in the future. We need to think about the environmental impact overall. What are enabling technologies for things like connected controls, which haven't done as well, nearly as well, as you all know, as many of us would have thought they might, or maybe even would have hoped. So seeing how these pieces can come together, seeing how we can make sure that the economic impact of this is significant, because again, these are taxpayer dollars that we're spending. We want to make sure that people get good value for their money. So again, it's not enough to think about how any one of these pieces contributes. It's important to drive excellence in all these areas. And we want to dispel the myth that it just can't be done, right? We want to basically set a mark, an ambitious mark out there for people to respond to, and see what they can come back to us with.
I'm going to one up you there, Brian. I actually think that we're at the end of the beginning of this, whatever you want to call it. And, there's a couple things. There's a lot of developments that are in front of us. There's a lot of mistakes to fix, errors that have been made by the industry, specifically with flickering LED tubes and flickering LED fixtures, with respect to darkness and our relationship to natural darkness and dark skies. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. And so I actually going to take it further. I think it's just starting. The fact that people are, suggesting that it's finished is you don't know that much about the lighting industry would be my answer to that. So let's go over to Kelly though. Kelly, how would you like to expand on that or add to that or just take it in a different direction here to start off?
No, I agree, and I think I'm kind of paraphrasing one of our senior members of the lighting community, Terry McGowan. He says it's always a great time to be in lighting, and I totally agree with that. And I think it's kind of exceeded our expectations back in the early days of LED replacement bulbs, and kind of the focus there on was just getting to be good enough to replace the fluorescent and standard technologies, and that needed to be a focus for a long time, and then price down needed to be a focus for a long time. But I agree, we're getting into a whole new ballgame here with trying to tap more of the potential of this technology, and I think that's what DOE has really tried to keep a focus on, is kind of what's the long-term potential of this technology to really transform lighting delivery, so that service that lighting provides, and really make that essentially so much more than people have usually thought about lighting. It's just kind of there. They don't notice it, right? And we want it to be spaces that people really love and they feel good about. And it's, oh, by the way, it's super energy efficient and super functional. And it's providing the right intensity of light and the spectrum of light to the right place at the right time. And it all works smoothly together. So when you look at it that way, there is a ways to go compared to where we are now in most commercial settings. So I agree. It's a really exciting time, and we think this prize really kind of brings together a lot of those themes and says, hey, let's try to innovate. And we know there's so many challenges with that when the lighting industry has been going through tremendous changes for the past 10 years. And just frankly, challenges. It's you guys know, you're out there every day, and it's a challenging market, challenging construction market and specification market and everything. And so, no one company can do this on their own, and we need to work together as an industry, and hopefully an incentive like the L Prize really spurs some thinking and some innovation. That's really what we want to see.
It's a celebration. It's a celebration of innovation, actually, which is fantastic.
Yes.
It's like celebrating it. I think that's a wonderful way, especially with government support. It always means a lot more when it comes from places like the DOE rather than, National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors gives out awards too, but it's not at the same level. But yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, I was just going to riff off of that, the question of innovation here for a second, and the idea that we don't have all the answers, right? I think it's very important for us to approach that with humility. My background's in science. I've long been comfortable with the idea that if you know the answer, then it's really not research that you're doing. And of course, that's the purpose of the program that I manage. But one of the other parts of humility is recognizing that if the existing approaches haven't been working, it's also important for us to make sure that we get as many people as possible interested in this. And I think a big part of that as well, and the prize, I didn't mention this quite as much up front, but I know it's something that you've discussed on this show, concerns diversity and inclusion, right? I think it's important. I think we need to make sure that the right people, of course, hear about it. We need to make sure that it's as broad as possible. We need to make sure that we're getting, for example, younger folks, maybe that have somewhat unconventional backgrounds, technical backgrounds, non-technical backgrounds, right? Many people I know that got interested in lighting did so from a theater background. How do we get people interested in and excited about this as a highly innovative field like everybody on this call knows? And so that's one of the reasons why the prize is also staged the way it is, right? It's not just big money for big players. It's also, how do we get people excited at the early stage, be interested in design? How can we get people interested in turning some of their ideas into prototypes? And then the latest stage of the prize, the last part of the prize, is how do we get as many folks as possible thinking about, again, what scaling looks like? How can we make sure we get these actually into buildings? How can we make sure that they're manufactured in a way that benefits the broader economy? And so I wanted to make sure I mentioned that also.
Okay, and I want to respond to that very quickly because
please. Yeah.
I think that's cute. Okay, I do.
Okay.
I don't mean to be crass with that, but I think that diversity, in a sense, when you're where it exists, where there is diversity, whether that's by age, whether that's by ethnic background or gender or what have you, needs to be embraced for sure because it broadens the scope and the deliverable and brings in all voices. How does that then relate to innovation, though? I mean, I don't understand how that translates. Is the innovation the diversity? Is that the innovation? Or are you expecting to increase scientific knowledge through that?
Well, I'm going to respond to this partially, and then Kelly, I hope you're going to go too, because of course you all have a lot to say about the subject also. So I'll start by saying that I think it's very important to acknowledge, again, that humility, that you don't necessarily know where the idea is coming from. As long as that remains true, it's a really bad idea to be closed off. I think one of the things that I'm learning as I engage with communities and other folks is that it's possible for someone who looks like me, I could be closing myself off to things just without necessarily even realizing sometimes. And so I want to make sure that I maintain a stance of openness and that we're interested in innovation wherever it comes from. And I think Tina Halfpenny had a great article about this, right, in Legs Magazine not too long ago, saying that because of the fact that there are so many unsolved challenges, we need to make sure that the doors are open as wide as possible. So yeah, to your earlier point, what's the point of this? The point is the innovation, right? That's my day job, that's my night job, that's my whole focus. And in order to do that, we're going to need as many people as possible to help us out.
Agreed. Just different perspectives is really important. And I think also kind of challenging ourselves in the lighting industry to provide really high quality lighting and some of the new features and value streams into places where we wouldn't necessarily expect them to go. Because often in lighting, when we have something new, it tends to go into very high-end applications because there's going to be a cost premium. And so it's like, where can we do this? Okay, it's sort of a showcase thing. It ends up being a very high-end building. And when we're in much of the field work we've been doing, we've been focusing on healthcare and senior care, classrooms. And we know, yes, there are new high-end versions of all of those, but there's a much greater population of aging infrastructure, basically, older buildings that really would benefit from some good, high quality, cost effective retrofit solutions, for example, that could be really interesting. And especially when we're looking at some of the benefits that we've seen just in field installations. I think Andrea has talked about some of this with you guys, just the way teachers look at lighting, the way nurses look at lighting, the way the families of babies who are in a neonatal intensive care unit, the way they look at lighting, right? You just really need that diversity of experience and income levels and perspective that help you see, oh, I didn't even think about that. that function of lighting that really could make a difference for people. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that expensive or that fancy. It's just, oh, did we think about building this in? So I think, it really could help us better serve a lot of markets. And that's good for the industry. That's good for the end users. And we hope very good for the energy perspective as well.
Well, that's it. I just wrote down and I kept meaning to bring it up each time with each one of you, what you said. But then there was another thing that came up that I wanted to respond to. It's this idea of redefining energy efficiency. So like there, you talk about, I always, on the show, I often say the bean counter's got to get out of the industry. That doesn't mean that, that doesn't mean that I'm not focused on energy efficiency. That's basically what I do every day in my own practice. But what I'm thinking of is like safety, understanding what outdoor safety actually is for people, as opposed to more light, more uniform light, 5,000 K, the more the better. That's a waste of energy, actually. Even if you're in that Jevons paradox where it's so cheap, the LEDs are so efficient that you can put up so many more of them, I don't think that falls within the paradigm of what you guys are trying to accomplish. Have you guys actually had discussions about redefining, like wasted light at night is not efficient, like these types of ideas? Have you guys unpacked those at all in your work and with the L Prize?
I'm going to say yes, and then I'm also going to turn it over to Kelly, because I know you have a lot more to say.
Yeah, I think we've been thinking about this a lot, and I think the industry is really starting to think this way too. The industry writ large, and I have in mind specifically the Illuminating Engineering Society, really trying to work on assigning and understanding the values of lighting, and there's different aspects to that, and it doesn't all come down to lumens per watt or watts per square foot. You just can't capture what you're really getting out of it with those traditional metrics. So you said the bean counters. Well, it's like, what are the different types of beans that we need to be counting, really? It's not just one type. And it ties into what we've been calling lighting application efficiency. And again, that's what I was saying before, getting the right intensity, the right spectrum to the right place at the right time. And, being able to have control over that, because I think the other thing that we're coming to realize is that, as we try to emulate more natural light, daylight, for example, we realize daylight is not static. It's dynamic. We really need more dynamic control over lighting, and to be able to get that value so that we can, when we talk about light for kind of helping our circadian systems, that we can have bright light when we need it during the day, and then very importantly, and as you were saying, Michael, low light at other times, right? That's as important is that it's that contrast and making sure that we're not getting light at the times when we really don't need it and don't want it. So yeah, I think that is something that we definitely want to focus on, is how do we metricize, quantify these different functions of light and truly get to what is important to people, what benefits people, what benefits the productivity and well-being, and other aspects of interaction with light that we have not fully fleshed out before.
I want to really quick also piggyback off of something Kelly just said. Hopefully you're noticing, either from this conversation with the L Prize or other things we're talking about, we really want to be as grounded and as practical, even as we're trying to push the front. So, right, it's one thing to talk about developing new metrics, but where Kelly, I think, is in my opinion, being too humble talking about the team, is that it's not just about developing the metrics themselves. It's also about getting a lot of people to feed in, right, to provide input, to make sure that we are considering a lot of different perspectives there, not just in a lab, but also out there in the field, talking to people, many people, getting them validated through like a consensus process, sort of like she's mentioning, but also the realization that none of this stuff matters if it sits on a shelf. And that's the same approach we're trying to take with the L Prize, right? That we don't want some kind of requirement that's going to lead to hothouse flowers that aren't going to matter anyplace, right? We recognize that they're probably going to be very futuristic looking at the time, right? In the next couple of years while the L Prize is happening. but we're also motivated by the experience from the first Hell Prize, and Kelly can tell you more about it because she was involved with the program then and I wasn't. But we also know that the innovations from those winning products, those winning submissions, they went everywhere, right? And that was one of the things that helped lead to the revolution. So that's been a real touchstone for us. Like, yes, let's be innovative. Let's be practical also. And by the way, if we're wrong about something, we want to get it right. And so you, right, your colleagues, other listeners, want to feed into the DOE's process, want to give us inputs and tell us, again, where we're getting it wrong. We value that input. So thank you.
Yeah, and that ties in nicely to what I wanted to kind of shift it to. To understand where we're going, we need to know where we came from. We had an L Prize in the initial L Prize. I guess, first of all, what does L Prize stand for?
Lighting Prize.
Lighting Prize.
It's as simple
I
as
like
that.
the simplicity. Okay, good.
Yep.
And what year was the first one?
So the first one, it originally launched in 2008, if you can believe that. It was at Light Fair in 2008. It was, I think, in Las Vegas. We had a whole group of utility people and others that were interested in the prize. Someone even started a wave and said, we're going to, this is going to be a wave that we're going to ride. It was great. It was fun. And we ultimately awarded that first L Prize in 2011. So it was a pretty lengthy process. It took some time to get an entry, and we had very stringent validation procedures, including some long-term testing. So we did basic photometric testing. Well, first of all, we required 2,000 bulbs. 2,000 of the sample bulbs to be submitted. We had 200 of those sent out for photometric testing at accredited testing labs. We also did our own stress testing on a sample of them, comparing them to CFLs and how they survived various stresses like vibration and high heat and humidity. And by the way, they survived where all of the CFLs failed in those tests. And then long-term testing under elevated temperature conditions. So we had an apparatus that we put 200 of those bulbs into, and I should be saying lamps. I realize I'm talking to a lighting community, so I can say lamps. We put 200 lamps in there and ran them at 45C. They were run continuously. And one of the things we wanted to see was, okay, when you run them, we knew that LEDs increase at the beginning, right? We wanted to see kind of where they leveled off or they peaked in their output, and that turned out to be just shy of 2,000 hours. And then we continued to run them for another 6,000 hours after that to make sure that they would meet the requirement. And then, in fact, we continued to let them run, for 25,000 hours, and then we got a statistical sample of those 200 that we continue to run even today. So they've passed. The last time we really published any results was 60,000 hours, but now they're well past 80,000 hours, and I think there's been one failure out of that, and the rest of them are still at a very high lumen maintenance and high or a low chromaticity shift. So they've really stayed within the boundaries. So you might even say somewhat over-engineered maybe for that application, but it kind of shows what's possible, right? And so what was the original question? Let's go back to the original question.
Yes. The history of it. So this is great.
Being
and
lost
so
in the
how
past,
many
yes.
submissions were there? Yeah, how many were there? Do you recall?
There was one complete submission. So the submission that came in from Philips Lighting North America was the only complete submission. There were two other companies that indicated they were going to submit, but that never came to fruition. We did not receive the samples from them.
Are those two still around? Curious.
Yes. Okay. Yes, right. They are. Yes.
It's like an LED museum.
Yeah. Well, we did donate the initial prototype lamps to the Smithsonian, so they've got it in their attic for the next time they freshen up the lighting and electricity displays. It's there. Yes.
And so, how much did they get? What was the dollar amount, sir?
Oh, the prize winner? That in that price, it was 10 million for the 60-watt replacement lamp.
Wow.
And then there was another category for par 38, which was going to be 5 million, but that was open for a while, and we never got any entries in that category. And I think it's, in retrospect, I think it's just because that market was already going along, and par 38 was one of the earlier applications, and I think the lamp makers kind of said, yeah, we don't need that because it's we're already going. And then then the third category is the one now that we've finally been able to open, and I think it's really good timing for it with the innovations that have happened since then.
What is the value of this L prize?
In total, the price is, or the purse is 12.2 million. And in the concept phase, the way we've laid it out is that we can award up to 10 winners in the concept phase, and those winners would get 20,000 each. So up to 10 awards there. And then in the prototype phase, there's up to a $2 million purse that could be split up to 3 ways. And then the larger prize is in the manufacturing and installation phase, where it would be a $10 million purse.
And right now you guys are working out the details of it, but are you able to, I know we talked a little bit about where it's going to be going, but is it going to be a screw and light bulb again? Is it a fixture? Is it what is it? A chipboard?
Do you want to address
not.
it? Just jump in anytime, Brian. So
Sure. So it's not. It's a luminaire. It's a finished lighting system, right? So it's not enough for it to just be a chip, right? It's got to include the driver, and in fact, we actually do have, again, some requirements around controls, so it's got to include those too. It's got to be fully functional, and I mean, Kelly's mentioning what these different phases of the prize entail. That initial phase, that concept phase, is based on paper. So it's all about plans. It's about providing a credible evidence. We're specific, of course, in the actual rules, but it's about providing actual evidence that folks can hit the technical targets that we're specifying they have to hit for the prize. The second one is again about a prototype. That third prize, that phase, that's we're asking for a lot, right? Because we're not just asking for a functioning prototype. We're asking folks to actually install them, as Kelly mentioned. It's the manufacturing and installation phase. We're asking for significant installations in actual buildings, and we're asking folks to try to increase as much as possible the U.S. domestic manufactured content of those products. Because again, if it's U.S. taxpayers who are footing the bill for this, it's only fair for U.S. taxpayers to try to get as much of that benefit into the real economy as possible. And of course, we don't know yet how many people are going to be interested or how many are going to enter. And we are interested in collecting input for both the prototype and the manufacturing and installation phases before they launch. We're collecting those actually until July the 15th. So, very interested in getting input from your listeners on that. You can send input in through the L Prize website. But basically, what we're looking to do is to incorporate that. But we've got a version of the rules that's out there now, and to say, look, this is what we think is impactful. Like I was saying a little bit earlier, this is the marker that we're putting down. Tell us, poke holes in it. Tell us where we're wrong, or where we need to change things, and we're going to take that under consideration before we issue the final versions.
Is it the fixture, the finished product? Are you defining the dimensions of it, like a 2x4 panel, or 2x4 fixture, 2x2? Or are you just saying we don't care if it's round, square, triangle, whatever, just as long as it can do everything?
There's no form factor requirement. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
It's got to be
Brian.
commercial.
Yes,
yeah. Point. I was going to say commercial settings, right? All office settings. We're not aiming for high bay, for example.
It sounds like it's a team of the channel that would win that prize. It doesn't sound like a manufacturer could win that prize without a team of people in distribution, or a distributor and a contractor, because you're talking about how does the system perform, and how is it commissioned in the field, and do the people enjoy what's happening? Does it cue them to do certain things? It sounds like the whole a channel partners would have to come together to make this application, or a manufacturer would have to lead its channel partners through this in order for them to get the scope of real installs in the field. Otherwise, it's just going to be a commission to some awesome sales guy, Greg?
Sounds like a nice one.
No, we do think that too, that it's going to be best if it is a team, especially in that third phase when you talk about, manufacturing and getting them installed and getting everything working. And so, we really see that as an important part of this competition is this teaming. We are going to be issuing, our plan is to issue an RFI for people that are interested potentially in teaming arrangements. Of course, a lot of that would just, go on behind the scenes, but we also want to provide an opportunity for people to see who might be interested. And so, we, like I said before, there's no one company that can do this all on their own, and really to try to tap into these new potentials of this technology. And so we really want to see, the industry coming together and pulling together teams that can say, look, there's different ways to do this. Let's try this out. And so we would love to see some great, maybe new teams and real, trying to go from concept to, because we know there's a big ocean to cross there in concept to actually making this work in the field. And that's going to take a lot of players, I think.
Is there a deadline, like you're saying, that's going to be shut down by this date?
Yeah, so for the concept phase, it's in November. So November 19th, I believe, is the deadline for the concept phase. And this is all going to roll out over a several year period, right? Because we want to get the concepts and allow, industry, research organizations and universities, I think students could be involved in this concept phase, and then launch the prototype phase. And that's a 9-month process to get the prototypes in, get those evaluated, winners
12.
chosen.
Sorry.
It's 12 months for the prototype phase, and then for the manufacturing and installation phase, an 18-month period. So because that's, like we said, that's a lot to ask. But it's a good challenge to put out there, and I think it could bring a lot of attention to some new innovations and a chance to just, I think one of the things in the first L Prize that was really useful was just kind of putting a focus on, can we get all of these performance attributes into one product? Yeah, it's hard. There's trade-offs, there's expenses, there's this and that. But yes, we can, and it kind of puts a focus on it and says, okay, let's kind of raise the bar of expectations. And so we're looking for something similar with this prize.
And so, as of now, there is no way to submit an application. It's just the gathering stage, and the feedback you're taking is just based on the parameters you've set. You're not asking for anything specific right now. You're just saying general feedback on it.
Well, the comments on go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry. We're accepting comments, and that's the first deadline. That's going to be here coming up in about a month. Folks can submit to the concept phase starting now, right? It opened on May 17th. The deadline for that is not until November, unless, Greg, you're very, very different from me. You're not probably going to be in a position, right, to submit that concept here next week or so. If you've got one. I mean, I really hope that you've got great ideas that you're going to be submitting to the L Prize. So that's one of the reasons why, what Kelly was saying, right? We really want to make sure we get the word out, want to make sure that as many people get excited about this as possible.
Well, it sounds exciting to me. It's very holistic in its approach. And at this phase of the lighting industry where, as you said earlier in the conversation, we're redefining redefining the energy savings, the idea of energy savings, and then including all these other areas. One of the things that I don't know if you've seen it, the podcast that is hosted by Jane Slade called Starving for Darkness, which is interesting. We've insisted on that show over and over that we could be looking at a paradigm shift, that the lighting industry actually starts to get paid to provide darkness. And that's it. People throw around the word paradigm shift a lot, but that would be a paradigm shift by definition. So, you think about it, how important to the DOE and PNNL is the restoration of natural darkness. And in my mind, I look at it, especially specifically for outdoor lighting, but HCL, the fundamental factor of HCL is restoring darkness at night. Anything you do during the day with lighting will be totally eliminated if you don't restore that natural darkness and increase the sleep of the person who the focus is on, whether that be an Alzheimer's patient or someone with dementia or an individual that's attending at the office every day. All the benefits come from better sleep. So human-centric lighting delivers better sleep to people, and then they're more alert, they feel better, they're less depressed, and all these other things. That's basically how it works. How important, or has that issue come up in your discussions with respect to the L Prize, or just within the DOE or in PNNL? And I'll let Brian go first.
Right. So as Kelly alluded to before, talking about light at night, issues around light and health in the field is something that we're actively working on, right? The DOE program actively supports at PNL. That work has continued, it's ongoing. And yeah, Kelly definitely should speak about that here in just a second. I'll say also, I wanted to drive home a point that Kelly also made here a couple minutes ago about lighting application efficiency. It's the way we're talking about efficiency in new ways. One of the ways we're talking about efficiency in new ways, which is to say, right, we have prioritized increasing efficiency of source technologies in the past, right? The LED chips, making sure that lumens per watt is advancing as high as possible, whether you're talking phosphor converted, right, or the directly excited color mixed LEDs. We want to make sure that we're continually pushing that, right, up and to the right. Now, at the same time, we're recognizing that an awful lot of photons that get generated don't ever reach an eye. That's if I cut out any of the other considerations, Michael, that you're mentioning, which are extremely important, let's leave those to the side, right? Anybody who cares about the fundamental energy saving mission needs to be disturbed by that, because fundamentally we want light to do the job that it's installed to do, and that is not lighting up the skies at night to distract pilots, right, from landing planes. So we're having to be very, very mindful about technologies that can do that. We are funding R&D projects to assess lighting application efficiency, to make sure that we describe it in ways that make sense, but also technologies, say with small businesses, that are around putting the light exactly where it's needed and not putting it where it's not. And so those are going to remain important. Certainly to me, I expect, to the program, as long as there's innovation there to do. And as you've expressed, we've got a long way to go.
Yes, and I would say the whole sky glow topic really has been on our minds for a number of years now, especially since the AMA came out with an opinion on light at night and kind of called out LED streetlights as an issue where this is really, we need to look at this, right? And so we did a modeling study that was published a couple of years ago, and then that in turn led to some work with the IES on the what's called the Sky Glow Calculations Committee. There is a document that's in the final stages of review and kind of consensus approval, so that should be issued by the IES sometime this calendar year, I think is what they're going for. So yes, it's a very important topic. How do we keep the light pointing downwards and only use as much as we need. You don't need to match the 1-for-1 output of HPS with LED. You're going to get way too much light if you do that, and it's just unnecessary. We need to get the right amount of light for visibility and be able to dim it or turn it off when people are not there and they don't need it, right? So that is very important. And I would say also this idea of the having dark when we need dark. That's also something that we've been looking at in some interior applications, specifically in senior care. So when you're in a senior care facility, it is a nursing facility, so they need light. The nurses need light all the time to be able to check on the patients, but that, it's not great to be sleeping in a room with the door open and there's bright hallway light out there. That is not good for your sleep. So even the simple step of really dimming down those hallway lights and decreasing the color temperature. We did find in working with some folks from Brown University School of Public Health, they documented that there was a statistically significant difference in people's sleep. So fewer sleep disturbances if you were able to do that. And it really makes sense. It's a pretty simple thing to be able to do. And again, this is kind of along the lines of what I was talking about earlier. How can we improve even in older facilities? It's a step you can take to retrofit those hallway lights and enable that, and it can actually help people sleep and still allow the nursing staff to do what they need to do. So I think the light that people get indoors in the later hours of the evening is really important, because certainly dark skies are important, but really most people are indoors in the evening, and so looking at their screens and looking at their phone and just the ambient light that's around them, we really need attention to that as well. So again, looking for kind of simple but effective solutions that help people sleep better is foundational.
Agreed. And before we, I got some feedback there. Hang on. Oh, there we go. That's the computer mic. Someone's computer mic is catching that. But it's. I think that the idea of darkness, instead of dark skies, I like to use the word darkness, because it's multifaceted. It adds to the idea of the topic. And I know your colleague Andrea Wilkerson has done a lot of work on the tuning and the cueing,
Yes.
and how that helps. And Mark Ray again is another person Dr. Mark Ray has done lots of work with the seniors. And this technology, we have a moral responsibility to deploy this technology based on their findings. It's a mandate, and so I'm so happy to hear about the L Prize. Greg, do you have any final thoughts, or should we turn it over to Brian and Kelly to kind of wrap it up on the L Prize and what we've talked about here today?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind a piece of the 12.2 million. I don't know how, but let's try.
We'll pull a team together.
Yeah.
You never know, man. We might cook up a little scheme. You never know. So
nice. Well, I guess I'd just like people to know that where to find it. It's on the AmericanMadeChallenges.org website. This is a host platform for lots of different prizes and challenges from the DOE. And so if you go to that AmericanMadeChallenges.org, you'll find the L Prize in the list there. And then there's lots of opportunities to get more information. You can get the full guidelines, requirements document. You can sign up as a follower so that you get regular messages about the prize. You can put together a team. So you can get all the information there. You can ask questions. All the questions are posted along with answers, and then you can access the formal comment period as well.
Greg, I know you really want the glory of winning, of all things. Come on, bud. It's not just the money.
I'll take the money.
Well, that's part of it, right? Bragging rights is part of it. That's a good incentive.
For sure. So, folks, if you've made it to the end, Brian, do you have any final thoughts for the listeners?
Well, I just wanted to say that I think that in general, thinking about the jobs that lighting has to do, as you're pointing out, right, as we arrived in this conversation, that's a topic that's really just beginning. And I really appreciate the chance to hash some of it out. Of course, it's always an hour is always too short, but just really want to encourage the two of you, but also listeners on your show. They have other thoughts about these topics and others that we should be thinking about. I want to stress that we don't have the answers, and it's not important for me to have the answers when I go out or when I originally approach a topic like this, right? But together, we need to get to the right answer, iteratively over time. And so really grateful for the opportunity to come on here to help us get in that direction, and hope we can continue to engage going forward.
And folks, if you made it to the end here, I appreciate it. And I just want to say equity and I don't know about equity, but diversity and inclusion is efficiency, because we're talking about deploying all of our human capital efficiently and in the industry. And so if you want to know more about that, Get a Grip on Lighting is putting out a special series with Edward Bartholomew and John Wilson, and they will be diving deep into those topics. It's going to be called contrast ratios. So you can check that out. I think coming out in July, Greg, no? Something like that?
July, August, yeah.
Something like that. It always takes a little longer than I want it to, but so look out for Edward Bartholomew and John Wilson. They're going to be diving deep into those issues and being more specific around that and not just touching on that. And of course, Greg, we got to thank our sponsors, Keystone Technologies. You got to go to KEYSTONETECH.com. The easy folks, Greg.
Right, doing the Keystone Live experience where you can actually see the product and work in the field or at their office in a big showroom. They demo it, and you can use it, sell it. Got great product. I don't know if they're doing the L Prize. We'll ask them.
Well, they can't do it without you, Greg, or Get a Grip on Lighting. We've got to form a team with them. Go to KeystoneTech.com. Of course, the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, Light Made Easy. That's Keystone. No, where you can join and be educated. We've come up with our LS Evolve program. We mentioned Andrea Wilkerson from PNNL. She just created 6 or 7 modules on cueing and tuning in there that you really need to check out. But LS Evolve is only for NAILD members. And of course, at the end of the show, we always say thanks to our colleagues and peers. We don't really have listeners. We just have colleagues that listen to this. So thank you for listening. And all that information from the L Prize will also be posted on the getagriponlighting.com website. So if you are driving right now or whatever you're doing, don't worry. Just go to getagriponlighting.com. Bye for now.